Oh my god, I finally get to talk about it. I finally get to talk about The Clone Wars. Star Wars The Clone Wars is my all-time favorite animated series. I love this show so much. I remember watching this on Cartoon Network every day as a kid. Star Wars is my favorite movie franchise of all time. The original trilogy was something I would watch on loop as a kid. In fact, my all-time favorite movie is The Empire Strikes Back. I'm not the biggest fan of the prequels for obvious reasons.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere. Not like here. Here everything is soft and smooth.
But I legitimately like Revenge of the Sith, and I put it on every now and then. And this trilogy is better than a certain new Star Wars trilogy, which we will get to eventually. But today, we are talking about The Clone Wars, and wow is this show good. It has great characters, animation, story, action, and it just feels like Star Wars. It actually created my favorite Star Wars Jedi of all time, Ahsoka Tano. I actually had a crush on her when I was a kid. I meant when I was a kid. I had a crush on her when I was a kid. I've obviously grown out of it since, she's 14 in the show, and I'm now an adult, and... oh yeah, she grew up in Rebels, and... wow. She seems really awesome. Oh, she's fighting Vader. That's pretty amazing, and she actually looks, really pretty, and cool, and, yeah, and... I don't... So anyway, now that the Clone Wars has officially ended, I decided to do a list of the top 10 best Clone Wars arcs. Now, keep in mind that this is mainly my opinion, and it was a pretty hard list to make since there are so many great arcs in the Clone Wars. So if your favorite arc is not on this list, I'm sorry. But that doesn't mean I don't like it. It only means that I like these arcs a little more than whichever ones you enjoy. And before I start the list, I want to clear up something. I know most people don't feel this way, but I know there is like 1% of people that is going to say, but, critical nerd! The Clone Wars is a kid show for little kiddies! Instead of talking about a movie made for adults, you talk about the stupid TV show that doesn't have the budget or maturity of a film. You like kiddie shows for little kiddies because you're a little kiddie. And I'm going to respond to that 1% of people who think that later in the video, but I think it's time to start the list. These are the top 10 best Star Wars The Clone Wars arcs.
Forget the mission. Oh, the nightmare. I'm free.
The Clone Protocol 66 arc. The name of the arc pretty much explains what these episodes are going to be about, but I'll explain it anyway. During an attack on a separatist base, a clone trooper named Tup approaches and kills one of his Jedi generals, which places him under arrest. The Republic thinks that Tup is being brainwashed by the separatists since he appears to be in some sort of trance. But Tup's friend Fives thinks that this is more than just a separatist scheme and starts doing some investigating on his own. He teams up with a medical droid and learns that Tup was not brainwashed, but had a behavior chip in his brain that malfunctioned and caused him to kill the Jedi. What worries Fives is that this chip was not planted by the separatists, but by the Republic, who had the cloning facilities of Kamino implant these chips into every clone at birth. And that these chips are designed to brainwash clones into following an upcoming order that they may find questionable in the future. One thing I really liked about this arc is that it gives us more insight on how Order 66 was planned and why it was so effective. I can understand people being upset that the mind control explanation is a bit lazy and that having the clones actually make the hard decision to attack their Jedi generals is more emotionally, interesting. But I think having this new explanation clears up a plot hole that Order 66 seemed to create. Most clones had a lot of respect and loyalty towards the Jedi, so it seems weird that none of them tried to warn or even inform the Jedi that Order 66 was a thing. And while the Order was technically meant for Jedi that betrayed the Republic, it makes you wonder why the clones would automatically believe that every single Jedi suddenly decided to betray the Republic. Yeah, this is technically a retcon, but it's a good retcon. What also makes this arc great is that it does a great job showing the bond the clone troopers have towards each other. The clones each have their own name and personality that gives them a unique identity. They even have different armor tattoos and hairstyles that helps you identify which clone is which. They see each other as not just clones, but brothers. It also helps that Fives is the main character for this arc. He's more than ready to question orders that he doesn't agree with, but that doesn't mean he isn't loyal or will disobey you. He's just not afraid to criticize things he has a problem with, and his priority is and will always be his fellow troopers. And earlier episodes show why he's so willing to help Tup, given their history. Now, the reason this is so low on the list, however, is because the final episode feels like it kind of struggles to conclude this arc, and the ending feels kind of forced. But still, it's a great arc with high stakes and clears up questions that the prequels made. And it's hard not to recommend any arc that centers around the clones. The Secret of Mortis arc. This arc does something that I was hoping the show would do when I was a kid. Give us more details and history about the Force. If you wanted a story that dives deep into the lore of the Force, then this is the perfect arc for you. Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka Tano crash land on a strange planet home to 3 people who simply call themselves Force wielders. The father, who is named, the father believes that Anakin is the chosen one and wants him to stay on the planet to look over his children, known as the son and daughter, who are incredibly strong with the Force. But Anakin wants to leave this planet, which proves to have dire consequences later in this story. This arc does a great job at looking into the psychology of our main characters while showing the true power of the Force. Through this arc, we see what these characters hope to accomplish by the end of the Clone Wars, while also seeing their greatest fears. And it does it through some surprisingly dark imagery.
He's a poisoner!
What are you?
Your fate!
Ow! What have you done?
You are mine now.
There's even some great foreshadowing for Anakin's tragic fate.
The Force is strong.
Anakin, please!
You were my brother, Anakin!
Powerful Sith you will be.
I hate you! No! No!
Man, I love it when this show references Vader. This arc also has one of my favorite Star Wars villains, the Sun. He is such an evil and powerful being that is the closest thing to a Sith god in Star Wars. But the arc does a great job at also explaining that there is a reason that he is like this, which makes the Sun a really interesting character. It also helps that he's played by the same guy who plays Starkiller from The Force Unleashed.
You are Sith.
Sith. Yes. And no.
Just so selfish and was taking too long to die, so I decided to move things along. now. You look frail, Father.
I am not dead yet.
Well, perhaps I am
Tired of waiting! I hate you!
Like I said earlier, the arc also does a great job at revealing how powerful the Force is and what it can do when being used by a powerful being. The writers explain that these beings are not normal, and they essentially walk a thin line between a mortal and a deity. This helps to explain why these creatures can do what they do, and it leads to some beautiful imagery. It doesn't go into midi-chlorian counts or random Force abilities that are only there for plot convenience. It instead takes its time showing the viewer the true power of the Force in a way that makes sense while also not hurting the continuity of the films that came before it. And it explains that only these creatures can manipulate the Force to this extent because they are practically gods, and Anakin is the only one that can also use the Force to this extent because he is the chosen one. I will say that the final episode is confusing and it left me scratching my head, but the episodes that came before it were really well done, and the final episode isn't bad, just confusing. All in all, a very good arc that shows the true power of the Force from a certain point of view.
What is that she keeps calling us?
Nera. It means brother.
The Ryloth arc. I wasn't originally going to put this arc on the list, but rewatching it made me realize how I basically had to put it on here. In this arc, the Separatists invade the planet of Ryloth, enslaving its people and putting a blockade around the planet. Because of this, the Galactic Republic sends forces to liberate the planet from the Separatists. This arc doesn't focus on the same characters for its 3 episodes, but there's a reason for that. The first episode shows Ahsoka's first opportunity in commanding a squadron and being put in a position of a leader. The second episode shows the ground invasion in the perspective of 2 clones, and the final episode focuses on Mace Windu seeking support from a group of rebels on Ryloth. The first episode does a great job in showing the burden and responsibility of being a leader, and the effect this role can have on the leader. Ahsoka's growth in this episode is very well done, as this shows that she still has a lot to learn, but has great potential. It also shows the close relationships Jedi had with their clones, and it has some great space battle scenes. The second episode focuses on 2 clones named Waxer and Boyle helping a young Twi'lek girl who got separated from her family. This episode is the main reason I put this arc on the list. I love how this episode focuses on these smaller characters in this invasion. It does a good job at showing the struggle and consequences of war that it has on civilians who are essentially caught in the crossfire. I will admit that I wasn't exactly crying during this episode, but there were moments that did make me tear up, and I spent the whole episode essentially rooting for Waxer and Boyle. The final episode is pretty awesome. It had some good action, but one thing I really enjoyed about it was the Twi'lek rebels, more specifically their leader. The episode takes its time going into the political problems he has with the Republic and why he is hesitant when supporting them. Also, remember how I said that the last episode essentially showed civilian crossfire? This episode literally does that. And I appreciate the writers showing the horror of war. Of course, there isn't like any blood or guts. They wouldn't have done that, and I'm honestly not sure if they could do that. Watching this arc again made me realize how great and well written it was, and I honestly can't recommend it enough. If you want to see some great characters, development that shows the struggle and pressure war has on its leaders, soldiers, and civilians, then this is a must-watch.
Cavalry has arrived!
The Bad Batch arc. It would be a crime not to put this arc on the list. It's such a fantastic arc and a great introduction to Season 7 of the Clone Wars. For those of you who don't know, the Bad Batch arc was one of the arcs that was scrapped when the Clone Wars got cancelled. Dave Filoni showed unfinished footage of this arc during a con, and it became one of the reasons people wanted Clone Wars to come back. So when Disney finally decided to let Dave Filoni actually do what he wants, they made the first arc of the season, the Bad Batch arc. The plot of this arc is pretty good. During a planetary invasion on Anaxis, that one. During an invasion on that planet, the Separatists seem to be able to predict and counter many of the Republic's strategies, which causes Rex to believe that the Separatists have a way of predicting their plans before they are even executed. Because of this, Rex and Anakin are assigned to investigate this theory with a group of clones with favorable mutations, known as the Bad Batch. Anakin, Rex, and the Bad Batch learn that the Separatists have a clone trooper named Echo held hostage, and the rest of this arc is about saving Echo and stopping the Separatists from winning the invasion on Anaxis. One of the things I like about this arc is how it's about the clones. Remember when I said every clone feels like their own person? The Bad Batch arc takes this idea to a whole new level. The Bad Batch are all clones, but since they are all mutated, the animators are able to make them more unique than the other clones. They all have different physical features, their armor and weapons make it easy to tell each clone apart, and there's even an age gap between the clones, since one of them looks a lot older than the others, but that's probably a mutation. The Bad Batch makes this arc. I want a spin-off with just these characters. We also get some great development for Rex. The show takes a lot of time showing how the war is taking a toll on Rex, and how he's tired of losing his brothers. His determination to save Echo is really heartwarming, and you understand Rex's perseverance to save his brother. Echo was a character we all thought died a long time ago in the show, so an arc dedicated to bringing him back was a pretty cool idea. And speaking of Echo, the best way to describe the arc would be an arc we'd never thought would happen, from a season we never thought would happen. But I'll talk more about that later. Let's move on to the next arc.
You showed me something today. You're exactly the kind of men I need in the 501st.
The Domino Squad arc. This was an arc that I loved watching as a kid. When the show was put on Netflix, the Domino Squad arc was one of the first arcs I watched. The timeline for this arc is a bit out of order since the arc was in multiple seasons, so I'm going to talk about the arc in order that the episodes came out in, rather than the order that they took place in the timeline of the show. If you want a chronological order of these arcs, I'm going to leave a link in the description that has a list of all the arcs and the order to watch them in. The arc follows the journey of a clone squad called Domino Squad, also known as Heavy, Echo, Fives, Cut Up, and Droid Bait. With its members, the first episode we see them in is called Rookies, where this squad is assigned on to guard a base on a moon. The base gets attacked by a new type of battle droid known as Commando Droids, and the episode is about Domino Squad, Rex, and Cody taking back the base. This was one of my favorite episodes as a kid. I really enjoyed this new squad of clones, and I loved seeing a new type of droid that wasn't present in the films. Like previously mentioned arcs, the clones have the same face and voice actor, but I still see them as individuals, even with the clones having the same armor and faces. Each clone feels like their own person. My personal favorite being Heavy.
Do we take prisoners?
I don't.
Heavy, no! You were gone too soon! Why? Why? Okay, seriously though, Major props to D. Bradley Baker for voicing all the clone troopers in this series. He did a great job giving each clone their own personality and identity. He's a great voice actor and did a great job in this episode. The second episode acts as a sort of prequel to Domino Squad on when they were training on Kamino. It's a pretty good episode that shows the process of becoming a clone trooper, and we get introduced to a faulty clone trooper called 99, who is a maintenance clone. We get a pretty cool speech from 99 later in the episode when Heavy is thinking of leaving the squad since they aren't doing really well on their training simulations. The scene is followed by one of my favorite Clone Wars moments where Heavy gives his medal for passing the simulations to 99. It's a heartwarming scene that cemented Heavy as one of my favorite clones. The final episode is about the Separatists invading Kamino and the clones defending their home. There's some really cool action, and we get to see Domino Squad and 99 again. It's mostly action, but the action is visually impressive, and it feels like an actual battlefield. Before we get into the next arc, there's something I want to bring up. Most of the Domino Squad is dead. The only surviving member is Echo. This is something that I've always had mixed feelings about, but now that I've had some time to process it, I think Domino Squad is one of the best stories told by the Clone Wars. Not just the arc, but every episode with these characters in general. For me, the Domino Squad represents the tragedy of war and the people you will lose during it. You will lose comrades, allies, friends, and even in some cases, family. And war won't leave you the same way it found you. The journey and tragedy of Domino Squad will always be something that sticks to me after watching the Clone Wars. The Domino Squad is one of the best stories told by the Clone Wars, and I was happy to witness it. Some may see them as just some more clones, but I'll always recognize them as Domino Squad.
Once the war is over, it will be our job to maintain the peace.
Yes, but will we do so as keepers of the peace or warriors?
The Return to Geonosis arc. This arc is one of the most epic and suspenseful arcs in the whole show. It's a perfect blend of action and horror, which I'll talk about later. I'm first going to talk about the first half of the Geonosis arc. The Return to Geonosis is about, well, the return to Geonosis. The planet used to be ruled by the Separatists, but the Republic had taken over during Star Wars Attack of the Clones, since they captured 2 Jedi and a Senator. This arc is about how the Geonosians and the Separatists are taking back the planet from the Republic. The Republic sends a fleet to retake the planet, and the arc is essentially about that. The first half does a really good job showing the invasion. There's some time taken to plan the battles, and the battles themselves are very well animated and action-packed. They feel open and grand while also being chaotic and claustrophobic. It feels like an actual war. The second half of the arc has a different plot. After the invasion, a Separatist leader named Polgo uses zombie Geonosians to capture a Jedi Master who is taken to a Geonosian queen to be mind-controlled by worms. The other Jedi rescue her, but the worms get onto a cargo ship and infect all the clone troopers on that ship. Also, Barriss and Ahsoka are on this ship. The second half of the arc is a much more horror-toned arc, and a pretty good one at that. The second half does a pretty good job making these creatures pretty intimidating and honestly kind of disturbing. There's no blood or anything, but honestly, there might as well be. I'm pretty shocked with what they could get away with, and for the people calling it a kid's show, Barriss and Ahsoka are also great choices for main characters on the final episode, since they both are strong and competent warriors, but are also young and inexperienced. What I also love about the final episode is this scene with Anakin. After Anakin realizes that Ahsoka is stuck on a ship filled with those worms, he interrogates Polgo to learn their weakness. This scene is really great, so I'm just gonna let it play for you guys.
Your feeble Jedi mind tricks do not work on Geonosians. The other Jedi already learned this.
Mind tricks? I don't need mind tricks to get you to talk.
I will never talk, Jedi.
We'll see about that, Poggle.
I think this is a good time to mention that my favorite Star Wars character is Darth Vader. All in all, if you're looking for grand action and claustrophobic horror, then look no further than Geonosius.
How am I supposed to learn if you won't let me share the risk?
This isn't a mission for learning. You either do or die.
The Citadel arc. This arc was always a favorite of mine as a kid, and I'm more than happy to put it on this list. This is about Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, Anakin, Rex, and a team of clone troopers rescuing a Jedi captured on a prison called the Citadel. This prison is specifically designed to capture and torture Jedi.
The Citadel wasn't designed to hold common criminals. It was created to hold Jedi if any of us lost our way.
Since it's designed for the Jedi, the Citadel is filled with a lot of high-tech security and traps that constantly put our heroes in danger. Think of it as a sci-fi version of the Resident Evil mansion. The arc has a lot of suspenseful moments that always keep me at the edge of my seat. There's wall mines, there's doors designed to cut you in half, there's saber tooth wolf things.
The Anubis!
Yeah, those things. There's even some great development with Anakin when he meets a young Tarkin in this arc. Yup, Tarkin is in this arc, and him and Anakin start to form this mutual respect towards each other. It's a nice nod to A New Hope, even if it is a little fan servicey. I guess you can say they both make all the wrong choices. What does that even mean? In all seriousness, the actor playing Tarkin does a phenomenal job playing the character. He does a great job capturing the dignified and calm voice of the character. Major props for Steven Stanton for playing the voice of Tarkin. You nailed it, man. Another reason I enjoyed this arc was because this was the same arc where Echo died. Okay, I'll admit this arc has a little less impact now that he's back, but still, at the time, I was pretty heartbroken. And like I showed earlier, the Citadel isn't afraid to show some pretty painful deaths. I think I have a lot of respect for this arc since a prison break seems like a pretty generic idea for a plot, but the Citadel does a great job of making creative traps and good character development to make up for the cliche idea. It's a creative and suspenseful arc, and skipping it would be a crime punishable by prison at the Citadel.
I understand. More than you realize, I understand wanting to walk away from the Order.
I know.
The Rogue Jedi arc. Okay, before you say, but, Critical Nerd, you only put this arc on because it's about Ahsoka. You're not being fair with your list. This list is completely biased and unfair, you fake fan. And I will admit that this being an Ahsoka arc does make me happy, but it's honestly just a bonus. I genuinely believe that this arc deserves to be this far up on the list, and I'm going to explain why. In this arc, the Jedi Temple gets bombed by an anti-war protester. Anakin and Ahsoka investigate and find the person responsible and turn them in. When Ahsoka goes to interrogate her, she gets killed, but the clone troopers believed Ahsoka murdered her, and she may even have been the one that ordered her to plant the bomb in the first place. Now on her own, Ahsoka spends the rest of her arc trying to clear her name. There are many things that I absolutely love about this arc. One of those things being the dialogue and imagery for the anti-war protesters. They do a great job at making this movement seem realistic. Another thing I love about this arc was Anakin's frustration. Anakin's role in trying to clear Ahsoka's name is one of the best aspects of this arc. I really enjoyed the arc when you get to see his temper and frustration.
Admiral Tarkin has ordered that no one be allowed in there.
I don't care what she's accused of.
Let me in.
Sorry, sir. The Admiral's orders stand. This is now a military operation, and under his jurisdiction.
Man, I'm a sucker for Vader foreshadowing. I also love the return of Ventress in this arc. For those of you who don't know, Ventress is a reoccurring villain in the Clone Wars, but in this, she's more of an anti-hero. I wish I could have talked about her more on this list, but I will say one of her arcs was really close to making it on this list. And now let's talk about Ahsoka. She's the main character of this arc, and honestly, she's the best part about it. This arc does a great job showing how much she's grown as a character. And putting her in a vulnerable situation like this is a good way to challenge this character. Ahsoka trying to clear her name and questioning her own morality is an interesting dramatic plot that keeps you invested. I won't reveal who frames Ahsoka because it's a really good twist that I was not expecting, and honestly, you have to see it for yourself. That's something I can say about all of this arc. I did not know what was going to happen. If they wanted to kill Ahsoka in this arc, they could have. I mean, keep in mind, Ahsoka was an original character that wasn't made until the Clone Wars series. I mean, we know how this arc ends, and we know she's alive because of Season 7, but we didn't know that when we first saw this arc. She could have been killed off. Actually, the original plan for Ahsoka was to kill her off later in the show. George Lucas always planned to kill Ahsoka to help develop Anakin's journey towards the dark side. But Dave Filoni really wanted to keep her alive, so he had her leave the Order, hoping that George would allow her to live after the Clone Wars. That's right, Ahsoka was literally made just to die, but Dave Filoni did not have the guts to kill his OC. And I'm glad that never happened, and it seems like most fans are too. One thing that caught my attention in the final episode was the Jedi's apology towards Ahsoka before she leaves. The Jedi seem to not really feel sorry, with the exception of Plo Koon. They make it sound more like this was more of a trial than a mistake. The only person that asks Ahsoka back is Anakin, and he's the only one that believed in her. I always felt like this was intentional. Like, to show the Jedi was kind of detached from most of their emotions, and instead of admitting mistakes and feeling sorry for their allies, they just associate everything with, this is all part of the Force's plan. Yep, this was all planned. Yep, the Force works in mysterious ways. That's just how it works. It seems like they learned nothing from this experience, but I always thought this sorry, not sorry moment was intentional. The last thing I want to talk about is the ending of the final episode. After Ahsoka's name is cleared, she leaves the Jedi Order since they didn't trust her when she was trying to clear her name earlier in the arc. This was always one of the saddest moments for me in the Clone Wars. Anakin and Ahsoka's final scene in this season always left me in tears, and seeing Ahsoka walk down the steps of the temple was so hard to watch. Everything from the music, the writing, the animation, all of it, it just makes this scene, and in my opinion, it's the best scene in the entire arc and a great way to end it. What else can I say besides the arc is a thrilling chase that will always have your attention and will probably make you cry at the end. You have to admit that this arc is the bomb. 2 puns. 2 puns in one video for no reason. No one thinks it's funny. I don't think this is funny. Fans don't think this is funny. I know this isn't funny. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this if it's not?
I used to believe that being a good soldier meant doing everything they told you. That's how they engineered us. But we're not droids. We're not programmed. You have to learn to make your own decisions.
The Darkened World of Umbara arc. This was so close to being number 1. No, seriously, I was really, really close to putting this on the top of the list. This arc is one of the most amazing stories I have ever seen on TV. This arc could be a plot for a Star Wars film if it wanted to be. It is so amazing and so well done that it would have been a sin to not put this on the list. In this arc, Anakin Skywalker and his clone battalion called the 501st are assigned to invade the planet Umbara. During the assault, Anakin gets called back to the Jedi Temple, and a Jedi Master named Krell is assigned to take over the command of his clones while he's away. After Anakin leaves, Krell makes it very clear that he's not the biggest fan of clones. He constantly gives them suicide missions, he gives them no time to rest, and makes it clear that he sees them as nothing but laboratory experiments. The first thing I want to talk about is the action. The action is some of the best that the series has put on. Instead of droids, the clones fight the inhabitants of Umbara, and honestly, I enjoy these guys as antagonists more than battle droids. I think having clones fight sentient beings adds more weight to the Clone Wars, and adds a sense of maturity to the battlefield. The Umbarans also have some great weaponry. There's little bugs that kill their opponents instantly, there's giant centipede-like things that can go underground, and there's walking tanks. Another thing I want to talk about is Krell. Krell is a really good antagonist for this arc. He does a good job at showing the difference between a tough general and a cruel one. His hatred and discrimination towards the clones makes him a villain I love to hate. Okay, now I want to talk about what makes this arc so great. The clones. This arc mainly centers around the clone troopers and aims to flesh out the humanity of the clone troopers. Like I said, the clones all have the same face and voice, but they are all different people. When watching this arc, I don't see random clones with the same face. I see Rex, Fives, Hardcase, Tup, Dogma, and so on. The majority of this arc is also mainly about Rex. If you want to know why Rex is a fan favorite, this arc will show you why. Rex is a loyal, crafty, and experienced soldier that will do what he can to get the job done. But he puts a lot of value in his brothers and makes it a priority to protect them by standing by their side in the front lines.
Sir, if I may address your accusation, I followed your orders, even in the face of a plan that was, in my opinion, severely flawed. A plan that cost us men. Not clones! Men! As sure as it is my duty to remain loyal to your command, I also have another duty, to protect those men.
The clones' loyalty and respect towards each other is what makes this arc so great. One of my favorite scenes is when Krell orders the clones to execute two of the clones for disobeying his orders, but when they are about to get executed, the clones can't bring themselves to do it. That was such a great scene to watch as a kid. Another great scene is when the clones are tricked into killing each other by Krell, and Rex runs into the battlefield trying to reveal that they are killing their own men.
They're clones! Take off your helmets! Show them you're not the enemy! They're clones! Whoa. Everyone, stop firing! Cease fire! They're not Umbarans! They're clones! Look! We're clones! We're all clones! What?
It is such a tragic scene, seeing the soldiers that see each other as brothers fight and kill each other. That was great drama. I'm not gonna go into too much details about when the clones stand up to Krell and they try to arrest him, because I don't want to spoil that scene because it is very, very well done. But I will say we get a great speech from Rex a little before this scene.
I used to believe that being a good soldier meant doing everything they told you. That's how they engineered us. But we're not droids. We're not programmed. You have to learn to make your own decisions.
I always loved this scene because it shows how much Rex grew in this arc and that he knows what loyalty really means. And I feel like that's the theme for this arc, the difference between loyalty and blind loyalty. Rex has earned the loyalty of his men and realizes what will happen if he remains loyal to Krell. The clones are more than ready to fight beside Rex, but Krell is forced to fight them all alone, and he constantly uses his rank to force the clones into submission.
The men are with you. It's just that some of them feel you're putting their lives in danger needlessly.
All the more reason to send a clear message that I am in charge, and insubordination will not be tolerated.
I am the king! I will punish you.
Any man who must say, I am the king, is no true king.
I don't know what else I can say about this arc besides it's so good. Give it a watch and realize you aren't watching a story of clones, you are watching a story of men.
Execute Order 66.
You knew this was going to be on here, even if you didn't think it would be this far up on the list. You at least knew that this arc would make the list. The Invasion of Mandalore arc, also known as the finale arc. Wow. Just wow. I can't remember the last time a finale of a series left me so satisfied. But does it deserve to be number one on the list? I'll answer that in a second. The story of the first half of the arc is this. After being gone from the Order for a while, Ahsoka runs into the Mandalorian to ask her if she can help them liberate their home planet of Mandalore, which has been taken over by Maul. Ahsoka seeks the help of her old master Anakin, who assigns his battalion to Ahsoka and the Mandalorians to invade Mandalore and capture Maul. The beginning of the arc is absolutely perfect. The intro does a great job at combining the traditional Star Wars film intro with the Clone Wars intro. It makes you feel like you're watching a film instead of a TV show. I also love the music for the fights. Huge props to Kevin Kinner for composing the music for this season and the previous seasons before it. He does a great job at capturing the atmosphere of the Star Wars soundtrack and blending it into the series. Now let's talk about the reunion of Ahsoka and Anakin. It's so satisfying seeing these two characters reunite in this finale arc. The final goodbye with Anakin and Ahsoka made me tear up when watching this. And of course, we need to talk about the invasion of Mandalore itself. This is such a great battle that has some awesome moments. The aerial fights, the ground battles, the underground battles were so well done and so well animated. The loyalty the clones have for Ahsoka during this arc was also very satisfying, but I'm going to talk more about that later. What I can talk about now, though, is this.
I was hoping for Kenobi. Why are you here?
Darth Maul. One of the best things to come out of the Clone Wars was the return of Darth Maul. Clone Wars turns this silent assassin into a power-hungry warlord that is obsessed with getting revenge from Kenobi for nearly killing him in The Phantom Menace. He's such an intimidating and powerful antagonist that does a great job serving as the finale's main villain and foil for Ahsoka. Good job to Sam Witwer, who played the voice for Maul in this show.
Every choice you have made
has led you to this moment.
It was I who languished for years, thinking of nothing but you. Nothing but this moment. And now, the perfect tool for my vengeance is in front of us.
I also want to give huge praise to Ray Park for doing the motion capture for Maul. He was the original body actor for Maul in The Phantom Menace, and it's cool seeing him reprise his role as Maul for the final fight between Ahsoka and Maul. So when we see Darth Maul fight, we are seeing the Darth Maul fight, and the final fight between them is amazing. This is one of the best lightsaber fights I have ever seen. Everything to the pacing, animation, voice acting, lighting, music is so well done. It's just so beautiful to watch. Now that I'm done talking about the first half, let's talk about the second half. The beginning of the second half of this arc is really interesting to me. After the Siege of Mandalore, the music starts to play this sort of uncomfortable melody. The music for this sounds intentionally ominous, like it's trying to trick you that this is the end, but the story has more to tell. Like it's lying, but you almost know it's lying. Later in the second half, Rex and Ahsoka talk about how the war is nearly over, and we get a really nice scene with them. Then, Rex leaves to hear a briefing from the Republic, but Ahsoka stays behind. Ahsoka and Maul then start to hear voices that are from direct scenes from Revenge of the Sith.
I don't like where this is going.
After all this build-up and tension, we then get this scene.
Execute Order 66.
Yes, Lord Sidious.
Rex, what's happening?
Stay back!
Find him. Find him. Vibes.
Find him!
That's right, Star Wars The Clone Wars is ending with Order 66. Where do I even begin with this? One of the things I wanted to happen with the Clone Wars was to have it end during Order 66. I even wanted a whole season dedicated to Order 66, since you wouldn't know what would happen. I'm so glad Clone Wars is ending with it. Seeing Rex trying to fight the Order, trying to keep himself from killing not just his comrade, but his friend, is so heartbreaking to watch. And worst of all, it makes Rex cry. Why'd you have to make me see Rex cry? Why? That is not okay. That is... It's also so painful seeing all of Ahsoka's clones betray her. All of these troopers who swore loyalty to her, who repainted their helmets to show their pride in being led by her, who were willing to go through hell and back with her, are now forced to kill her, and it's not even willingly. Rex's chip does get removed eventually, and him and Ahsoka try to escape together while using Maul as a distraction. Wait. Yeah, if I had to make one complaint about this arc, this would be the complaint. Ahsoka tried really hard not to kill clones because she knows it's not their fault, yet she sends Maul after him. Yeah, he's unarmed, but he's only technically unarmed, plus he's able to do some unarming himself. Now, the last thing I have to talk about is Ahsoka Tano. Her growth and development in this series was so well done, and the writing for her was fantastic. Ashley Eckstein did a great job voicing the character, and I'm so glad she was able to play her again for the finale. I have always been an Ahsoka fanboy, even when most people didn't enjoy her, and I'm so glad she's gotten so much fan love over the years, and I cannot wait to see what else they do with the character in the future. I'm gonna be honest on one thing. I am not going to even attempt to spoil the final scene in this show. This scene is so well done and so well executed that it needs to be watched, not told. I'm just gonna say this. I loved it, and I was crying so much when watching it. It's a very bittersweet ending, but it's intentionally bittersweet. So, does this arc deserve to be number 1 on the list? Well, in my opinion, yeah. Yeah, it does. And there's another reason why I think that. Because I never thought we were going to get it. When I heard Clone Wars was canceled, my general reaction was,
Are you kidding me?
I was so frustrated that I was never going to see a new season of Star Wars The Clone Wars. My favorite TV show was never going to end. I mean, they did try to finish it with season 6, but you can tell that it was a rushed ending and that they had a whole lot more to tell. The Clone Wars having such a huge demand for a new season really shows how loved and respected this show is. That's why I get really frustrated when people say stuff like, I don't want to watch it because it's a kid's show, or that you shouldn't take a kid's show so seriously. Because to me, that's such a lazy excuse and an oversimplification of a fantastic show that is technically for kids, but is able to handle themes that are for adults. And isn't that what Star Wars is? A movie franchise made for kids that is able to tackle themes for adults? If anything, Clone Wars is a show for kids and adults. So yeah, Clone Wars is a kid's show. But it's a kid's show with character development, slavery, civilian casualty, war, fear, and in many cases, loss. It takes several adult themes and scenarios despite the fact that the main audience is children. Maybe this show thinks kids are smarter and deserve a lot more credit than we give them. Maybe the creators of the show believe that there's a difference between being young and being stupid. Clone Wars is not perfect, and I can understand if someone doesn't like it, but to say the show is childish and is only a kid's show, well, that will never be a valid complaint about the Clone Wars. You can say what you want, but me and a million others agree on one thing. When it comes to Star Wars The Clone Wars, the Force will always be strong with this one.